If you are saving money in a bank account right now, you are committing financial suicide. The national debt is not a mistake. It's a meticulously engineered wealth heist designed to bleed you dry. Watch until the end, because escaping this monetary matrix is your only chance at survival. They take your hard-earned tax dollars, the very life force you trade for colored paper every single day, and they use it to buy gold-plated toilets for government penthouses. They incinerate billions of dollars on abandoned, decaying megaprojects, drowning the future in an ocean of inescapable liabilities. The United States is choking on $34 trillion of debt. Japan owes 2.5 times the value of its entire economy. You sit at your kitchen table late at night, sweating over a missed credit card payment, terrified of losing your home, and you scream into the void. Why aren't they bankrupt like a degenerate gambling addict? Why do we have to break our backs, generation after generation, to pay off their monumental incompetence? Warmly welcomes you. If this raw, unfiltered truth resonates with the anger in your gut, hit that subscribe button right now to support our work and give us the drive to keep exposing these financial realities. We do not sugarcoat the matrix here. We dismantle it so you can survive what is coming. Your outrage is entirely justified. It is the natural biological reflex of a human being who has been conditioned since birth to view the world through the narrow lens of an empty wallet. We are taught that debt is a sin, a crushing weight that inevitably leads to ruin. But let me pull back the curtain on the most guarded secret of the financial elite. At the macroeconomic level, applying your household survival logic to a sovereign nation is not just slightly flawed. It is a lethal dose of intellectual poison. Welcome to the naked, uncomfortable truth about national debt. The reality is that a completely debt-free government is exactly the catalyst that would trigger the absolute apocalypse of the global financial system. We must first dissect the very ghost story the mainstream media uses to keep you in a state of perpetual financial anxiety. Sovereign debt is not the high-interest personal loan you desperately swiped to buy a new smartphone. It is an entirely different species of mathematics. It is the total volume of capital a central government leverages to architect, sustain, and aggressively expand the geopolitical dominance of its economy. You must understand the life or death distinction here. Central government debt carries sovereignty. These entities command heavily armed militaries, seize national resources, possess the absolute authority to extract taxes from the masses, and hold the ultimate trump card: the monopoly on printing the very currency the debt is denominated in. A local municipality, like the city of Detroit in 2013, can absolutely default, go bankrupt, and have its assets liquidated like a failed grocery store because it lacks that magical money printer. A sovereign nation does not play by those mortal rules. The most catastrophic, foolish mistake the masses make is equating the national treasury with a family checking account. If you owe the bank $10 million and cannot pay, you lose everything. You end up on the street, and your financial life is terminated. But when a sovereign nation owes $10 trillion, it doesn't face eviction. It creates an entire financial ecosystem. If you were to force a sovereign government to adopt a belt-tightening austerity mindset, slashing all spending just to pay off the national credit card, you would essentially be suffocating the economy on top of a mountain of cash. If the government stops borrowing and stops spending, the lifeblood of the economy instantly freezes, creating massive liquidity blood clots. Corporations lose their massive public contracts, millions of blue-collar workers are thrown into the streets, and the very tax revenue needed to survive collapses into dust. Personal finance is a tragic zero-sum game. National finance is a colossal game of macroeconomic leverage, a realm where debt, when wielded by the masters of the universe, is not a burden. It is the very asset that breeds unimaginable wealth. To understand how debt became the bedrock of modern wealth, we must first look at the very mechanics of how this money is summoned from thin air to serve as the foundation of the global empire. For generations, the masses were pacified with the illusion of the gold standard, the archaic belief that every dollar in your pocket was tethered to a physical piece of shiny metal sitting in a heavily guarded vault. That was the old world, a world where governments were financially shackled by the physical limitations of the earth. But in 1971, the elite severed that chain forever, ushering in an era of pure financial alchemy. The moment the gold window was slammed shut, sovereign debt stopped being a temporary emergency measure and was instantly transformed into the central nervous system of global commerce.
When the United States Treasury needs capital, it does not go to a pawn shop. It issues a bond. This bond is essentially an IOU, but it is an IOU backed by the absolute most lethal and economically dominant force on the planet. Instantly, this government debt becomes the ultimate safe haven asset for the rest of the world. Global banks, foreign governments, pension funds, and massive insurance corporations do not keep their trillions in cash. They park their wealth in government bonds. These debt instruments are the pristine collateral that underpins the entire global derivatives market. They are the concrete foundation upon which the skyscrapers of modern global finance are constructed. If you view national debt as a negative balance, you are completely blind to the reality of global banking. To a commercial bank, a United States Treasury bond is not a liability. It is a premium, interest-bearing asset that they use to back the loans they issue to businesses and homebuyers. The government's debt is literally the private sector's savings. When the government runs a deficit, it is injecting net financial assets directly into the non-government economy. They print the bonds, the central bank prints the reserves to buy them, and this newly birthed capital flows through the arteries of defense contractors, infrastructure firms, and healthcare systems, eventually trickling down into the paychecks of the working class. It is a brilliant, ruthless mechanism of wealth creation designed by those who understand that in a fiat currency system, money is nothing more than a localized unit of trust. By weaponizing this trust, the sovereign state commands the labor and resources of billions, turning its own theoretical debt into the undisputed lifeblood of the global marketplace. Because this debt is the foundational collateral of the entire global matrix, completely eradicating it would trigger a financial extinction event unlike anything humanity has ever witnessed. We actually have historical proof of this deeply counterintuitive phenomenon, yet it is conveniently omitted from your standard high school history curriculum. Back in 1835, President Andrew Jackson aggressively liquidated federal assets, vetoed spending, and accomplished the impossible. He completely paid off the national debt of the United States. To the average citizen, applying household logic, this should have ushered in an unprecedented era of utopian prosperity. Instead, it triggered one of the most severe and brutal economic depressions in American history, the Panic of 1837. When a government operates at a surplus to pay down its debt, it is mathematically required to extract more money out of the private economy through taxes than it puts back in through spending. It acts as a giant vacuum, sucking the liquidity and life out of businesses and households. But the devastation goes far deeper than just a shortage of cash. Remember, government bonds are the primary safe asset of the global financial system. If a sovereign nation actually paid off its entire national debt, it would permanently destroy the bond market. Institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, and retirees would suddenly have nowhere safe to store their capital, forcing them to dump their life savings into highly volatile, incredibly risky private corporate debt just to generate yield. Without the bedrock of government securities, the entire banking system would lose its ultimate form of collateral. Lending would instantly freeze, trapping the economy in a catastrophic deflationary death spiral. Businesses would not be able to secure the lines of credit necessary to make payroll, resulting in immediate, catastrophic mass layoffs. The paradox of the modern monetary system is that the public sector's deficit is the exact mathematical equivalent of the private sector's surplus. If you demand that your government balance its checkbook and eliminate its debt, you are subconsciously demanding that the private sector, meaning you, your family, and your employer, be plunged into inescapable, crippling insolvency. The elite understand this delicate balance perfectly. They know that keeping the sovereign debt machine perpetually running is not a sign of financial failure. It is the absolute prerequisite for keeping the wheels of global capitalism turning without seizing up and shattering into a billion pieces. Yet, do not mistake this macroeconomic necessity for a victimless phenomenon. The survival of this colossal debt machine demands a constant sacrifice. And that sacrifice is the purchasing power of your life's labor. The sovereign government will never go bankrupt, and it will never default on its obligations, because it possesses the infinite power to simply print the currency required to service its colossal debt. But this divine power of creation comes with a vicious, invisible tax that slowly bleeds the working and middle classes dry. This silent assassin is inflation, and it is the most insidious, perfectly designed wealth transfer mechanism ever conceived by human minds. When the central bank materializes trillions of new dollars to absorb the government's endless issuance of debt, it dilutes the value of every single dollar that currently exists in your checking account. It is the exact same concept as watering down a glass of fine wine to make it last longer. The volume increases, but the potency is permanently destroyed. This is why the price of groceries, housing, medical care, and basic human survival seems to inevitably double every single decade. The physical houses are not becoming inherently more valuable, and the apples in the grocery store are not becoming more nutritious. It is the currency itself that is collapsing in value against the hard assets of the world. This brings us to the brutal reality of the Cantillon effect, the ultimate insider's advantage. When this new, debt-fueled money enters the economy, it does not rain down evenly upon the population. It flows first to the government, the megabanks, the defense contractors, and the Wall Street elite. They get to spend this fresh capital at yesterday's lower prices, purchasing real estate, equities, and massive corporate infrastructure. By the time this new money finally filters down to the average citizen in the form of a meager 2% annual raise, the systemic inflation has already driven up the cost of living by 10%. You are constantly running on a treadmill that is accelerating slightly faster than your legs can move. The national debt is essentially a legal mechanism that allows the government to confiscate the stored energy of your past labor to fund their present political ambitions, leaving you bewildered as to why you are working harder than ever but falling further behind. Were this brutal reality that your currency is being systematically cannibalized to feed the sovereign engine, you must radically alter the way you navigate your financial existence. The absolute worst thing you can do in a debt-based, inflationary fiat system is to be a responsible, traditional saver of paper currency. Storing your labor in a bank account that yields 2% while the central bank expands the money supply by 10% is financial suicide. You are willingly sitting in a burning building, hoping the fire stops before it reaches your floor. The elite do not save money. They accumulate scarce, tangible assets. If you want to survive the perpetual expansion of the global debt machine, you must learn to think and operate exactly like the institutions that built it. You have to aggressively transition your wealth out of fiat currency and into hard assets that cannot be printed on a whim by a central bank. This means acquiring premium real estate, holding equity in profitable monopolistic businesses, and securing positions in decentralized, mathematically capped commodities. When the government prints another $1 trillion to service its debt, the fiat price of these hard assets inevitably surges upwards, protecting your purchasing power and actually growing your net worth, while the middle class is steadily impoverished. Furthermore, you must entirely reframe your relationship with personal debt. While consumer debt, buying depreciating liabilities like luxury cars and designer clothes on credit cards, will destroy you, the elite use fixed-rate, low-interest debt as an offensive weapon. By borrowing fiat currency today to purchase income-producing assets, they position themselves to pay back those loans decades later, using heavily devalued, cheaper future dollars. They are literally letting the government's inflation pay off their mortgages for them. This is the ultimate final truth of the monetary matrix. The system is rigged, it is unfair, and it is entirely designed to extract your energy. But once you can clearly see the strings manipulating the puppets, you no longer have to be part of the show. You can step off the stage, acquire the assets that truly matter, and build a fortress of generational wealth that no central bank can ever inflate away. The modern financial system is not a flawed accident, but a meticulously engineered matrix where sovereign debt functions as the absolute foundation of global wealth. We have transitioned from the physical constraints of the gold standard to a fiat reality where governments conjure capital out of trust, injecting vital liquidity into the private sector. However, this perpetual debt machine demands a constant, brutal sacrifice: the purchasing power of the working class. Through the relentless, invisible tax of inflation and the Cantillon effect, the wealth of everyday citizens is systematically siphoned upward to the elite, who enjoy first access to newly printed capital. Eradicating this national debt is an impossible paradox. As history has shown, doing so would obliterate the foundational collateral of global banking and trigger a catastrophic deflationary depression. Therefore, the system will inevitably continue to print, inflate, and devalue. To survive and thrive in this rigged paradigm, you must cease being a passive victim of currency debasement. Storing your life's energy in fiat money is a mathematically guaranteed path to impoverishment. You cannot stop the macroeconomic printing press, but by understanding its mechanics, you can escape its collateral damage. The ultimate goal is to abandon paper illusions and anchor your labor in scarce, tangible assets, utilizing the very rules of the matrix to build an unassailable fortress of generational wealth. The true currency of the world is not money. It is leverage and scarcity. Fiat currency is no longer a store of value. It is a melting block of ice, an engineered tool used by the state to transfer the energy of your labor to the architects of the system. Financial freedom is not achieved by working harder to save the system's depreciating paper, but by positioning yourself on the correct side of the printing press. You must own the things the government cannot print. Stop hoarding fiat. Keep only a realistic emergency fund in cash. Treat every excess dollar in your savings account as a leaking tire.
Acquire hard assets. Systematically redirect your income into scarce, tangible assets that inflate alongside the money supply. This means investing in premium real estate, broad market index funds, equity in profitable businesses, or mathematically capped digital and physical commodities. Weaponize good debt. Stop using high-interest consumer credit cards to buy depreciating liabilities, clothes, cars, electronics. Instead, use fixed-rate, low-interest debt, like a 30-year mortgage, to acquire income-producing assets. As inflation rages, the true value of your debt decreases, meaning you are paying back the bank with cheaper, heavily devalued future dollars. Shift from consumer to owner. Change your daily financial psychology. Stop focusing on what you can buy and start focusing on what you can own. What is one specific asset, real estate, stocks, commodities, etc., that you are currently investing in or plan to invest in to protect your hard-earned wealth from inflation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to read your perspectives and build a community where everyone can learn from each other's strategies. If you found value in this video and want to master the rules of the financial matrix, please hit that subscribe button. Your support gives us the absolute motivation to keep researching and delivering high-impact, truth-driven content for you in the future.